Welcome, welcome, one and all. Winter Wizard here. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about the brand new Tempest of War. Today, whoever you are, and welcome to this little video of mine where we're talking about something very, very exciting indeed. In this video, I'm going to be discussing the brand new Tempest of War mission pack. Well, it's cold and lonely here in Winter Wizard's Frozen Fortress. It's just made a nice cup of tea over there, Terran Gold, and I'm joined as always by my comrade and co-host, Norwegian Troll Dimmu, so this is going to be nice. And as I said, we've got a very, very exciting thing to talk about here. We're going to be talking about the Maelstrom of, Tempest of War mission pack here, but that is what it is. This is the, this seems to be the latest reincarnation of the old Maelstrom of War, so, which is... Maelstrom of War, spoiler alert, was always my absolute favourite way to play 40k, so when this was announced, I was absolutely buzzing. I was absolutely buzzing off my icicles, and this is... So what I wanted to do is I wanted to create a little video for you today. I wanted to talk about this Tempest of War, why I like it so much. I'm going to do a little bit of a review of this product itself. I'm going to explain what this is, explain what I think of it, and basically have a nice little discussion about what I'm saying is, well, the best and only way to play 40k at the moment. I say the best and only way. I do, of course, I will be making a bit of light out of a few things here and there during this video, but everything that I'm talking about, everything that I'm saying here, I don't feel like I need to really say that, but I will anyway. It's all my own opinion. It's just a humble wizard's opinion here. As Winter's SEO once said, play 40k your way, and that is what I do, and that is what you should do as well. But so all this video is a focus of my own thoughts and feelings regarding Tempest of War, regarding the state of play at the moment in 40k, and so I hope you appreciate that. So first of all, what exactly is Tempest of War here? Well, as I said, Tempest of War seems to be a sort of an evolution, if you like, a reincarnation of the old Maelstrom of War back from, which I believe began in 7th edition. It was quite prevalent during 8th edition. So I personally got back into the hobby of 40k during 8th edition, and majority of my games in 8th edition were playing Maelstrom of War, and it used these old... I've still got my original Death Guard data cards here. And so this is what Maelstrom of War used to be. What have we got here? Man, I haven't got these out in a long time. But what have we got here? Those are all the stratagems. So they used to sell these data cards, well they still do, but you would have in it a whole set of tactical objectives here. And this was your Maelstrom of War tactical objective deck, and you would have a whole deck of these, and there'd be all sorts of different objectives in there. Defend objective this, secure objective that. There'd be all sorts of different stuff like big game hunter, kill vehicles, Kingslayer, slay the enemy warlord, overwhelming firepower, kill stuff with shooting, kill a character there. And the beauty of these things as well, they would have in them, like this one here, Spread Contagion. This was a Death Guard specific one, a Death Guard only one. So there'd be 6 Death Guard specific ones in here, and if you bought yourselves maybe the Eldar deck, there'd be 6 specific ones for your Eldar, etc. Like so. But what you would do is you would shuffle up these decks, and you draw some secondary objectives, at the start of your turn, and these would be your objectives to try and achieve during the battle round, and you can get points for them. So Maelstrom of War, it was a wonderful way to play. I always absolutely loved it. Loved the chaoticness of it, which I think some people, it was their biggest complaint about it. It was the fact that it was too random, that it was too, it wasn't very well structured. But as Maelstrom of War grew and developed and stuff like that, they came out with some very different versions of it. And one of those versions was in the old 2019 chapter approved here. And this was actually, this edition of Maelstrom of War was my absolute favourite way to play the game. And it didn't really get much time in the sun, because it spent about, well, they released this book, and about a few months later, where is it? a few months, Schemes of War, that was what it was called. So a few months later, this book became out of date, or I don't remember exactly. I just remember not getting very much time with it at all. But Schemes of War, this was absolutely brilliant, and this actually involved a little bit of deck building aspect to the game, where you would have your objective deck, but you would have to basically create your own deck from here using a minimum of 18 cards. So I could basically turn up to a game, look at the opponent's army, and then pull out the cards that I wanted and create a little deck of 18 cards, and those would be the ones that I got to work with. And there was all sorts of stuff going on here. There was stratagems here to sort of like burn some of your cards if you didn't want them, draw some new ones, things like that. And I loved the missions in these as well. Each one was done in relatively the same way, but there would be like a little twist, so for each one. And I really loved the little twists that they incorporated in here as well. So for example, perhaps in this game, one of your objectives, whilst you had 3 on the table, one of them you could actually keep secret from your opponent, things like that. So little stuff like that. Little twists and turns throughout the missions, and as I said, this was just my absolute favourite way to play. Absolutely loved Maelstrom of War. But then sadly it sort of well, 9th edition came along really, and we didn't really get Maelstrom of War anymore. So all the cards and stuff, as the codexes came out, they started becoming out of date, and it sort of drifted away, and it's a bit of a shame really. And we all sort of assumed that they would just bring it back in a certain fashion, but that never really happened. Yeah, that never really happened. So 9th edition, as you know, they were pretty on the nose about it. 9th edition seemed to be the edition where they wanted to sort of stamp out the ITC and go full competitive, you know, and they wanted to create the sort of secondary objectives and create the new missions in that sort of ITC style, and that was the way that they wanted the game to be, and they wanted to chase that sort of competitive side of 40k a bit more. That's just my take on it anyway, but I do really, don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed the you know, the 9th edition missions with the secondary objectives and all that goodness. That was really fun, but I was really hoping that they would bring Maelstrom of War back, and lo and behold, what they did was, in this little White Dwarf magazine here, they released what was called a beta version of Maelstrom of War. And I say beta, and what that means is that, well, it was basically in the works, you see. Here it is, Maelstrom of War. So they were designing a new system for Maelstrom of War, designing a new way that Maelstrom of War could be played, and the first glimpse of it was in this White Dwarf magazine. And now, when I first got this magazine, I did actually say in one of these little videos that I will be doing a video to tell you what I think of this beta edition. I ended up not doing that because, quite frankly, I didn't want to make a video which didn't have any positives in it at all. So what I mean is, I kind of hated this. I thought it was, well, to be perfectly blunt, I thought it was awful. I didn't like it at all. I didn't like it at all. I think there were a couple of things I may have liked the idea of, but yeah, I didn't like it at all. So I ended up just not making the video because well, yeah, well, that's it basically. I just sort of hated it really. It was absolutely far too complex, far too... Well, I'll talk about it all in a bit. What I'm going to do is, after I've discussed the Tempest of War, I'm going to compare it to all the other different ways of, all the other different versions of playing 40k that I've enjoyed or seen, and tell you what I think. But yeah, I didn't like this at all. But that's okay. It was only a beta version. That was the point of it. You were supposed to be able to, you know, read this through, have a few goes at it, and you know, send them your feedback. They invited you to do that. They invited you to send you your feedback, and they did say, you know, if not enough people like this sort of approach, we will go back to sort of doing something of the old sort of style, and that seems to be what happened. I sent some feedback in. I told them that I didn't like it at all. I know some of my friends did the same, and lo and behold, Tempest of War is now what we've got. So, and that's kind of the evolution of Maelstrom. You know, obviously I can't speak before 8th edition, but I remember in 8th it started off very, very simple, and then they adapted it here and there, especially with the chapter approves, made the sort of, you know, the deck aspect more interesting, started giving you ways to sort of mitigate the cards, you know, trying to create, because like I said, a lot of the complaints were like, well, if I draw a card and I can't do it, well, what happens there? So they try to, you know, like I draw, you know, what's it? Killer Psyker. I forget what it's called. Purge the Witch or something like that. If I drew, what is it? Oh well, here's an example. If I draw Master the Warp, that means I've got to do a psychic power. But what if I'm playing Tau? Well, never mind. So, and they started to address things like that as the game came along. Then 9th edition came along. This sort of fizzled out. Wasn't really sort of you know, up to date anymore. Then they attempted it with the White Dwarf. That didn't really work. And now we've got Tempest of War. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bust open this Tempest of War deck, and I'm going to show you what's what. I'm going to give you a quick overview of how the system actually plays. And I do appreciate that I'm probably a little bit late to the party here. You've probably seen lots of videos already about Tempest of War if you're interested. But like I said, I just really wanted to give you my own thoughts and feelings and my own spin on the subject. So here we go. Let's have a look at this. So we open up the box here, and we've got 6 objectives here actually. Very nice, very handy. And first up, we've got this is our primary mission cards here. Then we've got our sort of almost like twists here, which gives you a sort of mission specific rule there. And then we've got our deployment zone cards here. Don't worry, I will show you all of this in a minute. Then we've got our secondary objectives here. Secondary objective deck 1, secondary objective deck 2. Two stratagem cards here, new orders, very nice. And a little booklet about how the game plays. So let me run you through this. So first of all, it is a match play system, so it does adhere to all the sort of typical, you know, balance rules and things that you might know and expect in match play. You know, deep strikers arriving turn 2 or 3, you know, all those little nuances and stuff like that to keep the game nice and balanced and fair. So it does incorporate all of those. So to set up the game, first off we've got to determine a mission. So we'll take one of these 6 cards. This is your primary mission. This is the game that you're going to be playing, and it's going to be all very familiar, very similar stuff. This is sort of your match play style thing. You know, the hold one objective, hold more than one, hold more than your opponent. So they're not all. It's not all an exact repeat of that, but it's all that sort of style, all that sort of flavour. You know, typically hold one objective for 5 points, hold more than your opponent for 5, or maybe hold more than one for another 5. But each one of these as well is going to come with a very specific mission rule to it as well. So, for example, Burn and Raise here. This one tells you that during the game you may perform this action. I mean, raise an objective, and what that does is it basically burns that objective and it gets removed from the battlefield. But you might think, well, why would I want to do that? Because now I can't score it. Well, the primary itself, you actually only need to hold one objective for 5 points and hold more than your opponent for 5. So maybe, you know, if you're sort of wrestling the number of objectives here, then if you can hold on to a couple, maybe move out onto another one, and you could burn one, leave that one behind, you know, burn another one, because every objective that you've raised, that you've burnt off the board is going to earn you 5 points at the end of the game. So that's really nice there. So it's all that sort of stuff. So, you know, hold one, hold more, that kind of style, and then a little specific something, another way to score in there as well. So all these are really nice, and some of these, you know, these names are going to be recognized from like your GT Nuckman book and things like that. So that's your primary mission. Following that, we're going to be drawing a specific mission rule on top of that as well, and this is kind of, it's almost like a little bit of a bridge between match play and open play. So that's your sort of more match play style stuff there. This is kind of more like your open play stuff, but they're not as obnoxious, they're not as game breaking as like your open play stuff, but it does add a little bit of extra flavor, a little bit of something that you've got to adapt to, that you've got to think about. So, and it's really nice. So there's loads of these to draw from. So like I said, you'll draw a random one. Things like delayed reserves, and this like limits the turn number of which your reserves can arrive on, or it's like you want to bring them in, well, you've got to roll a dice to see if they actually arrive, things like that. This one, Maelstrom of Battle, there it is. This one says just shuffle the remaining mission rules and draw 2, play with 2 instead. So that was really crazy. That's actually probably the most craziest of all of them, getting you to do 2 different things. Secret Intel. So in this mission, a player only receives the Battleforge CP bonus at the start of their command phase if their warlord is on the battlefield or embarked in a transport within the battle. So I really love that. I really love things like that. Just a little something that you've got to bear in mind. You've got to keep your warlord safe if you want your free CP, you know. What else have we got here? Hidden supplies. Yeah, so this one tells you to set up an additional objective marker, things like that. Supply lines, again, you only receive the CP bonus at the start of your command phase if you control the objective in your own deployment. And these aren't, you know, so there's subtle little things to sort of shake up the game, a little thing to adapt to think about, to improvise with, but they're not horrendous, they're not game breaking, you know, and a lot of these you actually saw them starting to appear in the new Nachman book as well, so a lot of these will be very familiar, stuff that you've already seen before. So you'll draw one primary mission, you'll draw a specific mission rule, then we're going to deploy, then we're going to be drawing a deployment card here. So 6 deployment zones to choose from here, or to draw from. We've got the classic Dawn of War there, Search and Destroy, Sweeping Engagement. Again, all these are going to be familiar, you will have seen these before. Except perhaps this one, Spearhead Assault. This one's quite unusual actually. Very nice, but yeah, quite interesting, quite like that. Crucible of Battle. And then the Hammer and Anvil, another classic there. So 6 deployment zones to draw from, and that's how you're going to generate your mission. You'll draw one of these, one of those, one of these, and there you go. And there's loads of randomness there. There's loads of, well, there's loads of like replayability there. There's loads of like, you know, tons and tons of different combos. But so we'll draw those first, then we're going to set up the battlefield. So setting up the battlefield, we're going to be marking out the deployment zones, and then we're going to be putting down objectives. So if you're playing a incursion size battle, you're going to be using 4 objective markers. If you're playing a strike force, you'll be using 5. And don't forget, remember I said that there was a card in there which allowed you that 6th objective marker. But typically, if you're playing sort of large standard games at 2,000 points, you'll be using 5 objective markers. Now, players will alternate placing the objective markers, starting with the youngest player. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But that's how it goes, and then you'll be alternating placing the objectives on the battlefield. One of these objectives must end up in each deployment zone, and the rest in no man's land. So one in a deployment zone, the rest in no man's land, and that's the way it'll always be. But I love the fact that you get to place your own objectives again, and not only that, they can go in terrain features again now. So that's really, really nice as well. Absolutely love that. That used to always frustrate me that you couldn't do that. There we go. Players will then roll off for the attacker defender. Somebody will choose their deployment zone and be the defender and put the first unit down. The attacker will then follow, etc, etc. Your typical sort of match play stuff from there on in. After that, game begins, and there we go. So that's the sort of main setup, that's the table. You'll start playing the game, but that's not all there is, because of course we've got our secondary objective decks here. So let's have a little look at these. So this is where the real Maelstrom of Battle, the ever-changing ebb and flow of the tide, is going to take place. So two decks of secondaries here. There are 20 cards in each deck, and they are exactly the same. Both decks are a mirror of each other, so you'll have the exact same objectives that your opponent does. So you've got 20 cards here, you'll shuffle them up, and then in your command phase, you're going to be drawing yourself 3 of these, putting them into play. You can only have 3 in play at any one time. These are now available for you to attempt to achieve. At the end of your turn, if you've achieved any objectives, you'll score 5 points and the card will get discarded. Equally, at the end of your turn, if there's any cards that you don't want, that you don't fancy anymore, you're finding it a bit too difficult, or you just want something else in play, then equally you can also discard the cards as well. So don't have to do them all. Perhaps I might want to hold on to, perhaps I'm working on Defend Stronghold. Maybe I want to hold on to that for another turn, but perhaps I'm not feeling the other ones. I might want to throw those away, like so. Equally, at the start of your turn, when you draw your 3 cards, you can even, if you want, make use of your brand new stratagem, New Orders. And what this allows me to do is spend 1 CP to decide that I don't want one of these, and I'm going to throw that away and immediately draw a new one, immediately put a new card in play. So that's really nice. Another nice use of your nice use of your command point pool there to try and manipulate the tide of battle there. But there we go. Those are the secondary missions. Let's have a little look at some of them. They're all quite well, there's some similarities to the old Maelstrom deck, but there's a lot more matureness about them, a lot more of that sort of 9th edition feeling to them. There's very little in here which is like overly specific, if that kind of makes sense. So there's nothing like kill a psyker, do a psychic power, kill an airplane, you know, kill a flyer, bring down a tank. The closest thing you've got to that is assassinate, which is either kill a character or your enemy warlord. Things like that. But most of this stuff, it'll all be kind of familiar to you behind enemy lines. So get in your opponent's deployment zone, secure no man's land, just take 2 objectives in no man's land, blood and guts, kill stuff, raise the banner. Yeah, so just like your secondary for your match play GT missions, raising the banner there. Tempting target, so this is where your opponent gets to choose an objective and you've got to try and go after that. Grind them down, again a familiar title. Hold the line, storm hostile objectives. There's a few in here which are actions as well, like raise the banner, deploy teleport Homer. We know what that, we know we've heard that one before. Investigate sites. So actions are in here as well, stuff to do with actions. Overwhelming firepower, area denial. It's just it's a really nice mix, nice variety of stuff. In theory, any army that you've got or any army that you're playing against, you know, you should be able to achieve all of these with a nice well-rounded force with any matchup. So those are the secondary objectives, and that's just it. The game's going to keep going, and obviously the person who scores the most number of points at the end is the winner. And that is how the new Tempest of War works. That was a very sort of quick and rushed overview there, but I hope that gives you a sort of an idea. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what I think of. I'm going to tell you about this Tempest of War deck sort of as a product. I'm going to give you sort of my thoughts and feelings as you know, if you were to spend money on this, do I think it's good value? And then I'm going to talk a little bit about what I actually think of the game system and playing games of this itself. So when you buy your Tempest of War deck, recommended retail price, it comes in at £19, so just under 20 quid there. And the cards here, big chunky cards, nice and thick, really nice size, really beautiful quality. You know, GW, they do know how to produce really nice quality stuff here. So yeah, really big chunky thick cards, lovely quality, great printing and all this sort of stuff on there. This whole thing is it's very user friendly. You get 2 secondary objective decks, and I absolutely would not have put it past James Workshop to have only given you one of these and to make your opponent buy a deck themselves as well. But they didn't do that. They so easily could have, and it would have been a very sort of GW move. I don't mean to be too cynical, but you know, I think it's fair to say we could have seen that happening, but they didn't. They didn't do that. They've given you 2 decks. In theory, for a single game, you've got everything you need all in one deck. They've given you 2 secondary decks here. They've given you 2 stratagem cards there, which is a nice little touch, and they've even given you objective markers. Like I've never even seen them do anything like that before. I've never seen that before. You know, in the latest Nachman's GT pack, they didn't even put your core rules in there anymore, which I appreciate. You know, there's no core rules in here, but you've got a lot of other stuff in here, and you know, they decided that they would put the core rules in some of the other chapter approved books that they've released before, and they decided, you know, even for the same price, not to include them in there. So this is just very, very user friendly. Very user friendly, very nice quality stuff. Lovely box here, nice, and you know, it's just, yeah, really well made. And quite frankly, I think for the price at £19, you know, for GW standards, and I'd say this is a very, 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 very nice deal indeed. Very nice deal indeed. 10 out of 10 there. Worth every penny. So let me tell you what I think about the actual game itself, about the game system, about playing 40k this way. What do I think of that? Well, first off, we'll start with, I've got 1 negative and 1, no, it's not that negative, sort of, maybe a tiny bit, just a thought. So we'll start with those 2 first, and then we'll move on to the positives. So I'll start with the first point, which was, and again, like I said, it's not really a negative. It's more of like a, it was more of a thought process. And my thinking was using the new orders thing here, which I think is a really great option, but it does eat into your command points. So I wondered if there was a way that they could. Have it so you can, if you want to, you know, you've got a couple of chances to basically burn a card and draw a fresh one if you really wanted to, without it having to eat into your command points. Now, as I said, it's sort of a negative because I actually don't dislike it that much. I really like the fact that the stratagem exists. With the amount of command points that we have access to at the moment, I think it's absolutely fine. Like, and quite frankly, the less people are encouraged to rely on their stratagems, the better I think it is for the game. So I actually do really like that. But I wondered, you know, perhaps if, you know, as editions go on and maybe stratagems become much, you know, more limited, maybe command points are a lot more limited, perhaps they could have done a system where, let's say you get 3 tactic points, for example, during the system, where 3 tactic points, you've got 3 opportunities basically to, when you've drawn a card, to be able to get rid of one immediately and draw a new one. But I don't know. Perhaps I think currently this is probably the better way to do it. But I don't know. Just a thought, just a little thing that I was contemplating. Let me know what you think about that in the comments down below. But I do have one searing negative about this whole thing. One thing that just really grinds my gears and really winds me up, which is well, it's this here actually. Where is it? It's this bloody thing here. Yeah, it's the players now alternate setting up objective markers on the battlefield, one at a time, starting with the youngest player. Why? Why the youngest player? Why? Like, I just, it's really weird. Like, it's really confusing. Like, why did they decide to do that? Why is it just not a roll-off like everything else that they do is? I just thought that was such a strange thing to write. It was almost like there was some sort of weird marketing meeting where one of them thought to themselves, you know what, everybody, I've got this really great idea about how we can sort of you know, this is a great opportunity to sort of, you know, to focus on the more sort of younger audience of it, you know, to really sort of adhere to the younger crowd that are playing 40k. We'll give them the opportunity to put the first object. It's stupid. Sorry, Dimmu. It's really daft, and it's just so annoying. So I'm just going to be like, well, no, I'm not going to do that. We're just going to roll off, like, you know, like we do for everything else. So I don't really understand why they did that. I'm probably getting far too upset than is warranted about something like that, but I'm just like, why? And anyway, so the rant over, but quite frankly, that is the one single negative that I have about this box, and if that's really all there is bad to say that I've got to say about it, then, you know, it is what it is, I guess. But yeah, because there's just so much positive stuff to say about this. This is just absolutely fantastic. This has been absolutely, you know, this is knocked out of the park by GW here. This is an absolute avalanche of joy for me with this new box here. It's absolutely brilliant. Everything from setting up the game, you know, placing the objective markers, being able to be placed by the players, being able to place them in terrain features again. I really like the setup of the thing, you know, having, you know, always one objective in your zone and the rest in no man's land. Really love that. I think they've done a really great job with the primary missions, you know. They've got that nice sort of match play style to them, but it's not too heavy, and there's a nice little additional thing to think about, you know. And they're all different, they're all changing up. You've got the nice chunk of mission rules here, which are going to add a sort of nice little twist. The twists are really well done. They're really nicely balanced. There isn't a single one that I wouldn't want to play with. They're not, and they're going to allow your armies to still breathe and feel like themselves. You know, they're not going to hinder you, like, you know, obnoxiously. They're all interesting. They're all great. The deployment zones, 6 of those, like them all. Not a huge amount to say about them, really. Just, yep, lovely, fantastic, nice variety there. None of them are like super obnoxious. You know, like. like you might have seen in perhaps say like the open war deck. You know, there's no like deployment zones touching each other or anything like that, which I'm not opposed to, don't get me wrong, but I think, you know, as a sort of more match play line product, this is really brilliant. I just absolutely love the fact that you've got so much variety here. You know, it's not a deployment zone tied to a mission, tied to this. It's, you know, one of these 6, one of these 6, one of these here, and, you know, the replayability here, these, you know, the sort of replay value that you've got here with all these different combos is just absolutely fantastic. That will keep you entertained for years. You know, that's fantastic, absolutely fantastic. The secondary objectives here themselves as well, I think they've done a fantastic job of these. You know, they're really great. In theory, if you bring, you know, any army that's sort of like a nice sort of balance, you know, sort of a nice well-rounded list with a variety of different units, you know, you match yourself up against any other army, really you should be able to achieve, you know, all of these should be sort of doable, perhaps not every single time at every moment during every game, but in theory, you know, there isn't one of these that you shouldn't really be able to have any hope of achieving, you know. And I love that. They're not overly specific. Like I said, the maybe I didn't say it, I can't remember, but the assassinate card, you know, kill a character, kill the warlord, that's about the most specific thing that you get. So there's no things like, you know, kill a psychic, kill a vehicle, do a psychic power, you know, things like that. So I think these have been really well designed, really well done. I love the, you know, I think they've nailed it with the simplicity of it, of, you know, drawing 3 cards. You know, do you want to get rid of one for a CP and draw another one right now? Sure, fine. And then at the end of your turn, if there's any you don't want as well, you can bin those 2. I love that. You know, you can only get them once as well, so you've got to, maybe you want to go fishing for the ones that you haven't got yet, or, you know, you can't just rely on, you know, doing one over and over and over again. So it's really good. I love the way that it encourages you to sort of, you know, adapt, improvise, overcome. You know, you've got to, you know, I love the way that it's sort of the flow of the game. You've got to adapt to the ebb and flow of battle, and you've got to adapt to the tides of the maelstrom. I think it encourages some really great play, and I absolutely love it. I'm going to do another little roundup right at the end, give you again just to hone in those final thoughts and feelings about this deck. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to compare it, bring it out and compare to some of the other game systems that we can play at the moment, and tell you why I'm saying that right now, for me, Tempest of War, it's the only way to play. And so let me talk a bit about that for you now. So we talked about Old Maelstrom, of course. What do I think? Do I think this is better than Old Maelstrom? I would definitely say that this is a more matured version. It's definitely more fitting of 9th edition and where the sort of the game is at the moment. Overall, I would say, I'd say maybe yes. I'd say maybe it is better. It's definitely sort of ironed. It's definitely, you know, the initial product here is definitely ironed out a lot of the kinks that the Old Maelstrom had. You know, the sort of the far too specific objectives that you couldn't get rid of. You know, being able to sort of cycle through your secondaries and stuff. The sort of twists and turns that you can add to the missions here as well. Really nice. So Old Maelstrom 2019 Schemes of War, it was absolutely brilliant, absolutely loved it. Really liked the deck building aspect of it. Again, like I said, is Tempest of War better? Again, it's hard for me to say because I just absolutely love this so much, but I think Tempest probably just edges it. Just because of how the game is at the moment, things we've sort of adapted to and gotten used to, and sort of the state of play. And like I said, it's almost like this is a kid, you know, that little kid that you're really fond of, that you just want to grab by the head and scrunch like this. But he's grown up now. The little kid, he or she, they've all grown up and they've matured into this wonderful new Tempest of War here. So maybe that's the case. Maybe I'm just overly fond of old Maelstrom. Is it a better game system here? Probably yes. More balanced, more fair. but still with that lovely portion of the Maelstromic Tempestus Chaos. And then comparing Tempest of War to the proposed beta edition of Maelstrom of War in the White Dwarf magazine here. Well, like, you know what I think of this. So let's just say that can go in the bin. And other than that, we've got Open War here, and we've got Match Play. So let's talk about these two. So up until Tempest, these were the two ways to play. It was either the match play or it was the open play. Well, I say match play, you know, it was GT match play, you know, tournament style games, or there was your crazy open war deck. So let's talk about open war first. You know, I love me some open war, absolutely do. All the crazy sort of secondary, not secondaries, all the crazy sort of twists and turns and ruses, all these absolutely bonkers deployment zones. I love it, I really do. I've had a lot of fun with open war. What I do find though is that, well, when we play open war, we typically would add a twist. I've very rarely used a ruse. I've very rarely used a what do you call it? A sudden death as well. So typically I would just use a twist, a deployment, an objective, and I've had some absolutely cracking games of open war, I really have. But what I do find is that when I do play this, me and whoever I'm playing with will tend to incorporate some sort of match play sort of house rules as well. You know, we'll do like deep strike, you know, the rules about, you know, mixing detachments and mixing keywords and things like your deep strikers only arriving turn 2 or 3, stuff like that. So we'll add us to the sort of classic sort of house rules to keep the sort of slightly more balanced feel, you know, with the open play. Because what people don't often realize is that in this there's no, you know, you can deep strike turn 1 or turn 5 in this. Did you know that? But so we like to incorporate just a little bit of balance back into the game. But I have had some great fun with these, and I do love my bonkers twists that will really flip a game or an army on its head and make them adapt and make them work in ways that they're not used to. You know, if you know anything about my Winter Madness event, it was absolutely full of that. So I do love it, but it's not what I want to play all the time. You know, I really do love it, but again, as I just said, I will incorporate my own sort of balancing factors into it as well, and sometimes I just want to play something a bit more sort of straightforward and let the armies sort of do the talking, you know, because some of the twists and things in this, they might take what an army does and just really like you know, -1 to all your toughness or your strength. That really affects a force, you know. So sometimes the missions that you're generating here, they'll affect an army so much you don't really actually get to. Well, you get to know what the army does, but not a true sense of it, of what the army does, you know, or what you've put together. So that's my thoughts on Open War. Absolutely love it. We'll definitely be keeping it around. We'll be playing it once in a frozen moon, you know, and having a lot of fun with it. What I actually do really like to use the Open War deck for is I really like using it for sort of inspiration, you know. Inspiration, if I've got a bit of an idea of a sort of more narrative game that I want to do, I'll flick through the deck and maybe find things and pick the cards myself that I want to use that I think will sort of help and tell the story. So that's why I like to use Open War for. But as a general rule, Tempest is definitely going to be my preferred way to play over Open War, but I will absolutely be hanging on to this one. Then of course we get onto our GT match play stuff, and well, it's fun, but it got very boring very quickly for me. That's the lowdown, basically. That's the lowdown. You know, like I said, I did really enjoy the sort of secondaries and stuff at the start of 9th edition, but it just became a case that the game was all about those secondaries, right? And that you know, the sort of the attitude and the atmosphere around playing these games, it became kind of a little bit toxic, maybe, because like you'd sort of feel bad for just using units that you wanted to use on the grounds that you knew that they wouldn't always achieve the secondaries, because to me this game became all about the secondaries, to the point where people, you know, to win a game you would write a list to meet secondaries, you know. that was the kind of key. You gotta build a force, build a list, and write it so that you know that you could score this, this, and this. And it almost became a bit like you didn't even have to sort of interact with the enemy too much. You knew that if the enemy did nothing, you could still score your 70, 80 points, you know, like this. And it became so about a little bit too much about, you know, avoidance, not interacting, and you know, you'd come to a game with a predetermined plan, a predetermined recipe. You need to know that you hit this and this, and of course you've got to react to the opponent and what they're doing and how they're trying to foil your plans and stuff. But as long as you can, you know, your practiced recipe, as long as you can, you know, as long as you can stir it the right number of times, make sure you've added the right number of eggs and baked it at the right temperature for the, you know, you've got your cake and you can eat it. Whereas, so to me, it became very boring and pretty flat very quickly. So now I did actually really like this book. Well, I liked the missions in the book. I thought the missions were quite interesting. I liked that they each had their extra mission specific rule. I didn't like the fact that it now felt like you had your normal GT missions, and you're now forced to take a fourth secondary, because that's what it kind of felt like. It kind of felt like I was playing the same things, but now I had a fourth secondary to think about. Now, I know Tempest has a lot going on. There's lots of things to think about. You've got your primary, your mission rule, and your secondaries as well. But for some reason, it just felt a lot less heady. You know, a lot less like stuff to plan and think about all the time. You sort of have to make plans and adapt on the fly. And for some reason, that just like, I don't know. I don't know if it's just because it feels more fun, but it does feel more relaxed, perhaps. And so I don't know what it is about this. This as a product as well was a bit insulting, really. You know, 25 quid for this, a book which I need a couple of pages from, and they haven't even put the core rules like they used to. You know, I'm not, you know, if they never did that, then I wouldn't be complaining, but they've demonstrated that they're happy to do that, you know, and the price hasn't altered as well. When this is 25 quid, this is 19, like that is just, it's a no-brainer. I'm not really interested in going to tournaments or anything like that. I don't really like the play that it encourages, the list building that it encourages. You know, I feel like this encourages much more rounded armies with a variety, with a mix of stuff, rather than finding that one sort of like one sort of power combo to abuse and then rely on it because you know that it's definitely going to score you these points. Just to me, this is just not as good a game as this, and I use the word game as well. Like, it feels like this feels like more of a game. It feels more fun, and I wish I could sort of explain it a bit better, but it just does. It's just more fun. It's more of a game. This for me feels more like I don't want to say sports, but you know what I mean. It's like I said, it's that predetermined, pre-planned like thing. I don't know, I won't keep going on about it, but yeah, so I don't get me wrong, I have enjoyed my GT missions a lot, but you know, I do enjoy the game, and I would still play some of these, you know, really, but quite frankly, if I'd known this was coming out, I would not have bought this. I would not have bought it. Just wouldn't have. So I don't know if I'll put it in the bin. I might do. I'll hold on to it for a little bit, but yeah, no, you know what, it's going in the bin. Yeah, why not? Put it in with the older Maelstrom beater there. There it is. So, ladies and gentlemen, for me, it's Tempest of War. Yes, my beautiful Maelstrom of War, now reincarnated and brought back to me in this form as the Tempest of War. This beautiful little package here at a wonderful price with a wonderful production, which encourages absolutely fantastic games, which I now think is, well, like I said, I'm still very much in love with the old 2019 Schemes of War, but I think this is my all-time favourite way to play 40k. This is, and it certainly is right now anyway. For me, this is the best way to play 40k. I just love it. Absolutely love it. Can't say enough good things about it. So I'm going to wrap it up from there. But I want to know, what do you think of the new Tempest of War mission pack? So we're going to wrap it up there then. Things are winding down here in the Frozen Fortress. The sun's beginning to set. If you wanted to pick up a deck of Tempest of War, then do check out the channel sponsors, Bristol Independent Gaming, and use the code WinterWizard10 in the checkout for your 10% off and free postage on £50 or more. If you have enjoyed the video today, then a like and a comment would be very, very much appreciated. And of course, if you'd like to see more of what goes on here inside the Frozen Fortress, then perhaps you'll also consider becoming a subscriber. And once again, whoever you are, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm Winter Wizard. That's Dimmu. And for now, keep it frosty.